Hi, I'm Alistair Shipley. Driven by the beliefs that everyone has something special to offer, I created Not So Average, the podcast that proves that you don't need to be in the top 1% to be truly extraordinary. Each episode spotlights everyday people from your community, the very individuals you might pass on the street. These relatable stories reveal that whether you're a jack of all trades or a niche specialist, we all have unique experiences and valuable lessons to share. Imagine if we all took a moment to realize we're all not so average. Let's get after it. Welcome to another episode of Not So Average, and welcome to 2025. I'm really excited and thrilled to have one of my close friends with me today, David Chytracek, for this episode. We're going to be diving into his experiences as a teacher. Personally, I find that teachers are the backbone of basically the community, and they're definitely underrepresented in the podcasting community. So I had to bring on a buddy that I've enjoyed watching him grow over his decade of teaching. He's a father of two, a husband to one of my close friends. David, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It was like my second podcast ever, and the other one was a COVID hobby, so this is a little bit more legit. So fantastic.
A COVID hobby? Was this between friends or?
Yeah, it was a buddy of mine that I actually taught with overseas, and he needed a COVID project, and he started a podcast called After the Bell. No free ads.
No free ads. What? So was that about teaching as well?
Yeah,
or?
yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Smokes. Okay, is it still going?
I actually don't know. I think it ran its course.
That's interesting. So that was a buddy back in the United Emirates?
Yes, so he lives in like Leduc now, teaches in Leduc now, but we met there, yeah.
Okay, Leduc is not overseas for those that are following us.
No.
That is in Alberta, Canada. But let's just dive in here, because what I didn't really mention at the beginning of this intro was I find that the teaching community has been underrepresented, and this whole podcast is highlighting success in all its forms. And what we often find is like people just believe that they're average, and I'm not saying you're average at all, but the optics of, because we're not seen online with a huge presence or driving the fancy cars or doing all these things, that like we are not deemed by societal standards successful. And I've always watched you and your wife, can I say her name, Jessie?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jessie, as a fantastic professional couple, and I've always idolized kind of what you guys have built together. And I just, as soon as I started this podcast, I was like, who are stories that I really want to hear about? And you were one from the very get-go. So.
Yeah, I guess like when you think about success, like you said, people equate that with money and cars and appearance, and to me, success has always just been about happiness. Yeah. And I think I've done a pretty good job of maintaining a certain level of happiness and appreciating what's exactly in front of me in the exact moment. So if we're gonna get into success, happiness is that for me.
That's awesome. Did anybody kind of showcase that to you when you were growing up, or like where did you come to that view?
Well, as a teacher, you have to have that because you can work as hard as you want. You're not going to get paid more ever. So like the working hard and earning more is never a teacher mentality. Yeah. So every teacher pretty much has that in some sort of essence, unless you have side hustles and things like that. Not to say that that the teacher doesn't have drive, but I guess if you want to take it back to my childhood, is my parents, right? Yeah. My mom was an educator for 35 years, and my dad worked in a university, so he was an educator of sorts. He was more of a parent to the RAs on that campus. And so seeing the relationships that they would form, again, they worked very hard. It was never about successful being rich or successful driving fancy cars. It was, are we happy in our positions, and does our work give us meaning? And yeah, so it was basically my parents. And then when I met Jessie and her family structure, it was very much reflected. Hers and mine. Yeah. Our parents are very similar in that, and they were both educators as well. It runs in the family for sure, but yeah, it's never been about dollars and cents in terms of making us feel whole.
I love the part of the podcast where I get to learn a little bit more. I was unaware that your parents were also educators. Fun to hear that you and Jessie are both like second generation educators from a household that are full-time educators as well. That's amazing. So I guess I don't really need to ask this question of growing up, what led you to becoming a teacher? is it safe to assume you saw your parents go through it? And was there something
Yeah,
else?
I mean, for the longest time, you didn't want to become your parents. Like you want to be the antithesis of your parents a lot of the times. But it fell into my lap when a phys ed teacher of mine said, "Okay, you're gonna earn this grade that I'm gonna award you here." It was like, say it's something in the 90s. For you
high
to
grades.
yeah, all right, sure. Said, if you're gonna keep this grade, you have to do something for me when you're in university. And I said, "Whoa, okay, what's that?" Is you have to coach like Stars basketball. Stars basketball was this program for little kids, and its motto was, "It's better to be a good person than it is to be a good basketball player." Ooh. And so my dad coached in the program, coached me in that program, and then he said, "Okay, like you're doing great in phys ed. I want you to stay in the 90s. This will ensure you staying in the 90s." Not really blackmail, but a little bit.
Yeah.
He needed somebody to pick up this program, and I did. And it was that first little taste of coaching and teaching smaller kids that.
What was the age range?
The age range was like 6 to 10 years old. There was like two-hour sessions, one from like the 6 to 8, and then the next from 8 to 10. And just hanging around with those kids every Saturday morning was probably the first inkling. I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. If I get to get paid for this, then let's go ahead and do that. Because the fulfillment was off the charts right away. As an 18, 19-year-old kid, giving back to my community and my sport, and it was phenomenal. So,
were you viewed as like a big brother at that age range, or were they looking at you as a full-grown adult that they looked up to?
Yeah, probably more of an adult at that point. I didn't feel like one by any means, but compared to those kids, and then doing that coaching and teaching at my original elementary school was full circle. So, yeah, and I should mention that like I saw like the relationships that my parents built and fostered and nourished firsthand, because we actually grew up on a university campus until I was 10 years old. I lived in dorms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Whereabouts was that?
It's called Augustana.
Okay.
And so it's in Camrose, where I grew up. Small town of 16,000 people. The campus was a student population of 1,000 people. And my dad's job predicated that he lived on campus.
Yeah.
Until I was 10 years old. My brother was 15, my sister was 13. I never really had aunties and uncles because my parents are both American, came up here, and no aunties and uncles that are like directly next to us, proximity. So all these aunties and uncles that I knew were college students.
Yeah.
And again, those relationships that my parents had formed and made them their pseudo cousins, brothers and sisters type of thing. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. This is some fun context for me to just see who are your role models. I had a sense that it was your parents based off of just personal discussions, but it's really nice to hear like you got a taste thanks to your gym teacher. Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure your folks are so proud when you said, "Hey, I'm going to follow in your shoes."
Yeah, I think mom to a certain level was like, my sister's a teacher as well. My brother is not in education. He's like the only one. And to a certain extent, mom knew the kind of lack of growth there was in education. So she was like, you can be anything you want. Teaching is great, but you can be anything you want. Don't feel like you have to. She was steering us away, but like when you see how happy it made her, it was a no-brainer for me in terms of, if we're just talking overall quality of life and happiness that your job provides, mom couldn't lie about that. But I think she's pretty self-deprecating. Think, oh, for those that can't teach, all right? Those that can't teach gym, so like that sort of thing. But she's self-deprecating in that way, but she doesn't give herself enough credit. She's a very smart woman, and she did really well for us. So
that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That indirectly answered a bunch of questions that I had, so that's awesome. I wanted to actually ask, as a teacher, what are some of the I'm going to actually cut this part out and rephrase it, but often as you get older, there's this unsaid message that always goes on, like the generation below us aren't as resilient, or they're just not as social, or there's some view of like it being problematic, the generation below. I wanted to spin that and get your perspective. As a teacher, what are some of the characteristics of the generation of students that you're teaching that you're really impressed to see?
I'm impressed to see is, I guess, like they have access to information more than we ever did growing up, and whatever they want to get into, they can get into that. Like it doesn't take a lot of effort. Now, the flip side of that is that
They have access
they're distracted really easily, because in 1 minute they could be a pilot, and the next minute they could be a YouTuber, and the next minute they could be a chemical engineer, and they think that if I can look it up and I can gain the information, then it's all right there in front of them. I always tell the students, we have knowledge, skills, and attitude that we're trying to teach you. The least important is the knowledge because you can Google it. Everybody can Google it. It's the skills and attitude that you really need to make it, you are who you are. Wow. And if you can harness those two and have access to the knowledge, then you'll be fine. But it's the skills and attitude that will make you flourish in life. Like I said, what I'm most impressed with by this generation is how quickly they can get into something and become an expert at something. But they got to know that it takes a little bit more than just knowing the knowledge.
That was so good. I love that. So what are some of the most difficult parts for you when it comes to the education of this new wave of students? Because now you've been in it for 10 years. So
yep.
I guess, does that mean that you taught Gen Zs and now Gen Alphas? I don't know.
I think there's still Gen Zs, the ones that because I'm a high school teacher right now.
Yeah.
Alpha, I guess, is coming up. I don't know where they come into play, but I guess I'm most concerned with is, and have been for a while, is like that social media aspect in terms of what they think success is, their standard of excellence, because they see beauty portrayed in a certain way, excellence portrayed in a certain way, and they think if I'm not this in this little box, then I am less than. And I get a little concerned with that. But I listen to certain things, listen to certain podcasts, and I hear that Australia just passed and Europe's taking a very close look at like banning social media for kids under the age of 18 and have some really good steps in order to gain access to social media, like government issued IDs and things like that. That has its drawbacks for sure, but I think I'm most concerned with just the amount of what they think is excellent and them thinking that they're less than. So it is so much of our jobs that feels curriculum is one thing, assessment is huge, but to nurture somebody that is so easily malleable, especially with how social media can portray and treat kids. So that's my biggest concern.
Yeah, no, there is a scenario of we're starting to come to the point where we're realizing with the creation of social media, we unleashed this Pandora's box, and now we're trying to put everything back into the box with these regulations that you're seeing. But unfortunately now society has a dependency. There's businesses, there's careers, there's flow of information and news, whether or not we want to get into the topic of fake news and all that stuff. But yeah, there's a dependency. It's going to be really difficult to say, hey, we're now cutting this off, especially for the 18-year-olds have spent their whole life, if we're talking about Australia, taking it back, like they've already spent their whole life on social media. It's an addiction. To dial that back is going to be so tough. But no, that's...
Well, you're seeing it right now with the law here in Alberta with cell phones, like the zero tolerance policy. Like it just came into effect in classrooms everywhere in the school. You can do it during the bell, like in between classes. You can have it out during lunchtime. But if we see it at all, this is like the new law. Like it's not a district, it's a law that got put in because Quebec did it right before, Ontario did it right before the end of last school year, and then Alberta adopted it over the course of the summer, and then we had like time to talk about it and implement it, and semester one's wrapping up, and we've had a full half a year to see how it goes. And so when you say put everything back into Pandora's box and how daunting that is, we just did it with just cell phone use during classes. And like you're saying, teachers should be able to do that. High school was a different ball game when it came to that, and now it can be done. We saw it. It wasn't that bad.
Was there a come down period?
Oh, for sure. 2 weeks in September, it was like, how are we doing, guys? And there was different
kids
ways
like
to go about it. And as soon as they have it out, your role as a teacher right now is to be like, please, let me have it. And then you can either hold it to the end of class, you can give it to an administrator, you can give it to the office, and they'll deal with it.
Okay.
And you can see the angst. They can keep it in their pocket.
They can keep it on their
person. That's school-to-school based. Some people say they don't even want to see it in your pocket. Put it in your backpack, in your locker, in your car, whatever it is. But so it's interesting, again, to bring it back to the whole put it back in Pandora's box, like put it all back. It is possible. We've seen it. So let's give this generation some credit. They can probably do it. In terms of the social media thing, I think they can do it.
You did say that they're malleable. And I think it doesn't matter which generation, at that age, you are very malleable. So they have probably a better chance of relearning better habits than I'm starting to relearn change my habits as a 34-year-old. And my gosh, my dependencies on certain things is difficult. But I just remember when you were younger, like you could just navigate something really quickly and just get connected to something new really fast. What are some of the things about teaching that you think people most often overlook or maybe even misunderstand?
That people overlook. Oh, the bell times.
Okay.
They think our bell time, like our work time is the bell time. 9 to 3:30 must be nice. That's classic. I got friends all over the province that say, "Oh, my heart bleeds for you, Dave. 2 months off in the summer," and I'm like, okay. How often do you spend at your day-to-day job? 14 hours a day, and not every teacher is like this. I'll use myself and my wife as an example because she's one of the greatest teachers I know because. She's a core subject teacher. I'm a phys ed teacher.
Okay.
I'm expected to do some coaching along the side. It's not written anywhere, but it's just like expected.
Yeah.
You don't have a ton of marking, not a overwhelming amount of planning for phys ed. You're expected to coach a little bit.
Yeah.
My wife is a core subject teacher. She teaches science, chemistry, and biology. And
She always was good at her sciences.
she was. But she's not. We're expected to enhance the school community through extracurriculars. She's always taken it upon herself to coach 2 sports and teach a core subject. And this is where people don't understand the day-to-day, the month-to-month, week-to-week grind that we go through. Because yes, the bell rings at 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
Usually there an hour before, 45 minutes before the bell, getting your day started. And then after the bell is when you get to go coach. And for high school sport, however long the season is, 2, 3, 4, 5 months.
If you go from city champions to provincial and all that.
Yeah, so just basketball, for example, started at the end of November. And this year, we will go to the middle of March.
Yeah.
Just the way things are structured. And every day after the bell, no matter what, in high school, every day after school or every school day, you are practicing. So it's 5 days a week, like no matter what. Whether it's playing, coaching, or coaching in the morning, you are expected to be there for that long. And so people don't understand that side.
Because that's technically unpaid.
Correct.
If you decide to teach or coach 3 teams or 4 teams, like you're not, as you said before, there's not this bump up in earnings and stuff.
No, and so that's a whole nother conversation, probably another hour and a half that we could do another time about how the coaching, teaching landscape is changing and how other districts do it. But yeah, the big misconception is that you have an easy 9 to 3:30 job and you get 2 months off in the summer and 2 weeks off at Christmas and life is hunky-dory for you because you simply don't have to work that hard. And how dare you say you need more money because we haven't had a raise in 10 years. It's pretty wild in that aspect, but I at the same time I still feel very lucky to do what I do.
That's your optimistic side that I really appreciate. But this was a point that I wanted to discuss while on this podcast because I think every person has had one pivotal teacher in their life that probably orientated them in a particular direction. And without that person in the education system, many of us wouldn't be the people that we are. And I think that there needs to be a little bit more celebration and acknowledgement and shining a light on teachers. I've had elementary school teachers that made a huge difference on me, middle school, high school, and then especially post-secondary. Post-secondary, I know falls under a different realm of what they get and stuff like that. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about, because I thought this was freaking cool. I still to this day kick myself for never coming out and visiting. You and your now wife went and taught in the United Emirates. Tell me, how the heck did you fall into that? Tell us some stories that really stuck with you about that experience, because obviously that's a completely different world than Calgary, Alberta.
Yeah. My wife and I had just got married, and while we were engaged, we knew of a friend that we went to university with in undergrad that was already at this school in the United Arab Emirates, the Canadian International School in the UAE in Abu Dhabi. And she was like, you guys would be perfect. They love it when couples come over. And it's something that we always wanted to do. My brother actually did some teaching overseas as soon as he finished his undergrad. And we were just finishing our after ed. So we were just becoming teachers. We were brand new to the profession. And we saw that they were hosting interviews in Calgary. and put our name on the list.
Sorry, what was the name of this? You said the schooling, something Canadian.
Yeah, Canadian International School. So it's an Alberta accredited school. So they teach Alberta curriculum. It's like if you would just like teleport a school building from here and placed it over there.
Interesting.
And the clientele, the population was just expats.
Oh.
And yeah, a couple locals here and there, but people from Europe, Australia, and then in the Middle East as well, you had some Egyptian, some Jordanian, a bunch of different. So it was a great place. So yeah, we got hired, we got married, we got hired, and then we went off that September or that August. And then we were there for like about 2 years. That place is wild. It's so glamorous. It's so on the surface, incredible. It's so mesmerizing. And if you stay there long enough, you'll slowly start to realize it's not like home at all. Because they have everything that you have at home. They have a McDonald's, they have a Shake Shack, they have a mall, they have an H&M.
We don't have Shake Shack here.
That's true. But they have everything a Western culture would have. The longer you stay there, the more you realize, well, that country is really just built off of some backs of some very hardworking, unfortunate people. And not to say like we can't. Whenever you go to a place, you can disregard how they do things and say this isn't right, but without actually like living there and having all the context, you won't be able to have a good argument against the way that they're doing it. So realizing that, I held my tongue a little bit and said, we're just here for the year. It's amazing because here, it takes so much to travel.
Yeah.
Like it's such a big country to get out of, and it costs a lot. There, you could visit, I think we visited 13 countries in 2 years because it was so easy. And teaching over there, you get a lot of the Canadian holidays, a lot of the Arabic holidays.
Yeah.
And so here's one story I'll quickly tell, but it was based on the head sheikh seeing the moon so he could call the holiday. He has to see the moon a certain way.
Is this like Groundhog Day? But
I don't know exactly
See a
the
shadow.
ins and outs of it. I'm probably speaking a little bit out of turn, but he has to view the moon a certain way in order to call the holiday. It was overcast, so he couldn't call it. It was supposed to be a 5-day weekend, so we planned this 5-day Egyptian tourist trip. Going to do all the things. Going to go see Valley of the Kings, the pyramids of Giza, and see all the museums and have like a nice relaxing time. But he has to see the moon, and it was overcast. He couldn't see the moon. We're like, oh no, what are we gonna do now? So he finally sees the moon like the 3rd day, calls the holiday, and now this 5-day trip got condensed into 2 days, and we didn't sleep for the whole weekend because we did everything, but we didn't sleep. So our tour guide was just like, we rebooked everything for you. Do you still want to go? We're like, yep, might as well.
you guys were younger then.
Yes, much younger, exactly. Yeah, saw the Valley of the Kings and the pyramids of Giza.
Yeah.
They didn't like that very much, but I took a little piece of the pyramid and put it in my pocket. But yeah.
Cutting that part out.
Don't at me.
Okay, that's incredible. So what was like a memorable story that you had from actually teaching there? And I guess you had alluded to it, like on the surface, you could, if you probably squinted hard enough, you could feel like it was back home,
Yeah.
but there was this underpinning difference that came up. What was like a story that you had that maybe highlighted that?
Well, from the day to day, it was that there was no like union behind us. There's no protection of your job.
Yeah.
So we saw administrators and teachers get fired on the spot, and then they're expected to leave right away. So
if you could maybe share that story. Wasn't there some, I recall you sharing this story of somebody on their social media made a comment about the different classes, and then somehow she was
yeah. So
fired.
this was a story told to every international teacher that would come in, and it wasn't something we directly knew, but somebody always had 6 degrees of separation of some similar story that happened to someone they knew. But so the Emiratis there drive big white SUVs, and they're pretty loose with the law because it's their country and there's only a certain amount of them, and they get awarded a lot of things if they stay in the country. Once you turn 18, I think, and get married, they'll give you a plot of land. Well, just here's your land, build your house and have your life kind of thing, because they want locals to stay there. So they, again, were kind of loose with the law. So they would double park you all the time. They would cut you off if you were in line. They would just go right in front of you because they are the top tier citizen.
Okay.
And then there were us as expats that kind of just had to take it. But there was one that decided not to take it.
Oh,
He took
boy.
a picture of the SUV that had blocked them in a parallel park job and said, I guess this is how the Emiratis do it. And she was shipped back to Australia the next day.
Oh, it's that quick too.
Yeah. So great place, mind your P's and Q's, and keep your head down, do your job, and just enjoy it for what it is. And if you're the ruffling feathers type, it's probably not the place for you.
Yeah. Tall poppy syndrome is a real thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, if you really stick your head out there, I'm sure you get into trouble. No, that's awesome. I'm still envious that I didn't come out and visit. What are some of the difficulties with the current education system that you observed, and how do you navigate it right now?
Yeah, I guess the district is really desperate for teachers and desperate for guest teachers and substitute teachers because there's this new, and I know you talked about it in a couple other podcasts, but the idea of like work-life balance and kids as in like brand new teachers are coming in and not doing what I talked about earlier, not putting in the 14-hour days, the coaching as much as you can when you have time to coach. Now that we have 2 kids, we know like we used to do overlapping seasons all the time. Like I would coach a basketball season, Jess would coach a basketball season, but now with 2 kids, we know that's just not possible.
Yeah.
So sacrifices have to be made. But up until we had kids, which was first 7, 8 years of our teaching career, we were pedal to the metal all the time, give to the school community as much as we could because we saw teachers do that for us.
Yeah.
The brand new teachers that are coming in have this idea of work-life balance, and then they are owed this work-life balance already. And I don't want to step on people's mental health. I think it's so important to have this balance, but understand where you are in your career and what you have to give. What you have to give. You know, I love the saying that somebody, I can't remember which teacher it was, but he said, he did a really nice thing for me and a group of my students. I think he was a culinary teacher, and he brought food for us after practice, after we had a really long game, a really long weekend tournament, and then we had a practice, and he brought like dinner for everybody because he had all this extra food and I'll make it for the team. And he said, the least that I can do is the least that I can do. And that attitude is no longer with the brand new teachers.
Oh man.
It's, I want to look out for me, number one. I want to make sure that I'm okay. And if I work too hard, I know I'm going to quit. And again, I don't want to step on people's mental health, but it's work-life balance. Work can be life.
Yeah.
And especially with teaching, it's so intertwined. I don't know when.
It's not a balance. The word should be blend.
Yeah.
Work-life blend.
Yeah, I like that.
I can't coin that. I'm pretty confident that was Jeff Bezos.
Yeah.
Because you can't compartmentalize every part of your life for your entire life.
Yeah.
To say, I'm having 8 hours of home time, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of work. Like, it all eventually blends together, especially with this attention economy. And I've said this so many times on the podcast. That's what everything's vying for right now is your attention, your time. Mel Robbins talks about this. I listened to it on Chris Williamson. Everything's vying for your attention, but it's how you blend it together. Like I don't know. There's just certain things you wouldn't expect, but.
What was that example that a guest of yours had? And he said he wanted to spend some time with a buddy, but he also wanted to work out at the same time. I thought that was a brilliant way.
Yeah, you get creative.
Yeah. And now I start doing it on my commute. If I want to check in with people, I don't like schedule some stuff on when I get home. I just do it on the way to work. I hit as many people as I can because I know I'm like, okay, I could learn a little bit. I could listen to a podcast. I could decompress, or I could combine 2 things at once, just like your buddy did, and check in on people on my 24-minute on the way there and the way home commute work. So
there you go.
I thought that was really nice of him.
Yeah, this podcast is partially me doing that. It's a really nice opportunity for me to reconnect with people I haven't seen in a while. It's nice to also learn about people. Like, you and I have known each other for a long time.
15?
Yeah. And it's just nice to get these views that you're getting. And I get that from every single guest. And this actually gets me super excited every time. So let's get back to it though. Actually, I want to go back. That comment that you made about the culinary teacher and saying the least I can do is the least I can do. What does that mean to you? Like, you said it really resonated. So what does that mean to you?
If you can do something to help somebody, why wouldn't you? If you have the ability, the time, the space, the funds, whatever it is, if you can do it, why wouldn't you? And so much of the time when we see kids and we're asking how they're doing and they're like, okay, whatever it is, your interaction with that student could change their day, could change their outlook, could save their life. Like the worst thing, I'll take it back to another question that you had in terms of what's the toughest thing. I said the social media piece, thinking that they're less than. The worst thing that has ever happened to any teacher is a student of theirs takes their life. That's like the worst that can happen. But again, the least that I can do is hold my head up, look at you in the eye and smile and say, how's your day? Or comment on those brand new shoes that you have, or comment on that new haircut that you got. That might be the difference in saving someone's life. As corny as that may sound.
Something so small but so meaningful.
Yeah. So, and then if you have the time, space, and money, the least that I can do is the least that I can do. Why not do it?
Fuck, that's good. Wow. I want to sit in that for a second.
And that's like, again, that's not coming from me. This is all just, I'm very fortunate to be surrounded by some really great educators and by family members that just all these nuggets are coming at me. And again, you and your other guests have had these really great sayings, and you know who they come from. I have no idea where all this stuff comes from. It's just downloaded and I just spit it back out like a movie quote, but I don't take any credit for it. Okay?
You are phenomenal with the movie quotes, I will say that. Okay, so how has the role of a teacher changed since you started, and what do you think the future holds for educators?
The future, the role, the change. I don't think it's changed. The mission is still the same. Impact kids' lives in a positive way. For phys ed, that just means exposing them to as many different games and opportunities as they can possibly have, so that they have the ability to say yes someday. Because the idea for phys ed is never to make a Div 1 athlete. It's for them to be comfortable enough to say yes. So if you call me up and say, do you want to go roll around for jiu-jitsu for an hour? My buddy dropped out and we need one more. If my phys ed teacher did his or her job, I will not hesitate and I will say yes. So that is the mission, I think. And I don't think that's changed, especially for phys ed. You can ask another teacher if you want for different content or different courses. But that's the mission of, I think, of a phys ed teacher. Be confident enough to say yes to any opportunity that comes your way in a physical participation setting. And in terms of the future, man, I have no idea. Other than I think that we're in pretty good hands. We know that people keep having kids and Calgary keeps growing and the population keeps growing, so we're going to need more and more teachers. I don't think there's ever be a lack of work.
Yeah.
With the birth of AI and automation, it's going to be interesting to see how much we value that and how much a skill or a competency needs to change because of this new technology and because of this new tool. I'm actually taking my master's right now, and my next course is technology in education. So I'm looking forward to that and packing that. So that's going to be good.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the role and the mission is still the same, and then you went into the explanation of through education and introducing them to a lot of different things, you're giving them the ability to try. I've been really focused on how do I improve levels of confidence. So that's not even just about myself. It's like when I sit down with others, how do I drive confidence? So I've been going down some rabbit holes, and Mel Robbins has really stood out to me. And this week she was talking about, or well, not this week, but the podcast I was listening to about confidence is created through the willingness to try. And you're basically doing that by giving them the opportunities to try things. They therefore become confident.
Yeah.
And she was saying like confidence isn't something that you feel, it's an action. And it's because you tried. And so I think you're building up these kids' confidence through the activities that you're doing every single day. It's not just the fact that you're running them through their paces and their heart rate's going up and therefore they might be healthier and all this stuff. That's not to be challenged. I think you're doing so much more than that. You're giving people actual confidence. Like I remember gym class in high school. You never left the class not feeling freaking good. It was a community builder. It was a huge community builder.
And it's like a muscle, right? And the more you do it, the more comfortable you get inside that space, and it needs to be, talking about confidence, it needs to be worked. It needs to be challenged, or else you're probably not growing in the way that you want to.
So I've always seen you and Jesse as exceptional teachers, and I hope that I get a few more teachers listening to this podcast too, that maybe this will resonate with them. But other than that, what strategies do you use to engage and motivate your students, especially in today's digital age?
I think phys ed lends itself to, and then we talked about the cell phone ban, like in today's digital age, and with the current landscape of education, you're not going to use your cell phone a ton in phys ed class. And in order to get kids engaged, I love bringing in maybe a game from like their country, a game from an aspect of, okay, we're all going to suck at this for a second. Okay. So take the game Chytracek. Have you ever heard of that game before?
No.
It is insane. Go look at some of the highlights of Chytracek.
Say that one more time.
Chytracek, I think is how you say it. And it's Thailand's national sport actually. And it is, I hope it is. I hope I'm not wrong on that. But it's like volleyball with your feet on a badminton court.
Oh yeah, I have seen that. Okay.
So the way that those athletes work their body and it's out of control. We are nowhere near that type of athlete.
Your ligaments aren't moving now.
Exactly. So I'm like, hey guys, here's something that I guarantee none of you have mastered or even attempted to play or like in an organized fashion. So let's just give it a try, and we'll break down the skills into little mini games, and then we'll try the sport. Okay, we're all gonna suck at this, and there's something so great when you see the high school basketball all-star just absolutely suck at something. Like he can't do it at all, and he's brought down, he says, my world, I can own this gym. Not today, not.
Humbled.
Yes, but that's how most kids feel about everything all the time when they get into the phys ed class. But if we all start on that we all suck level, then we're all having the willingness to fail. We're all having the willingness to try, and because the person next to me is no good either. So there's a lot of comfort in everybody being on the same level. And for that, you have to go way outside the box in order to do it. Yeah.
That's such an interesting approach to finding just, I'm not going to say unpopular sports because it sounds like it's Thailand's number one spot, but like uncommon to North America or wherever you're teaching out of, and just putting everybody at zero and seeing where they go. That's awesome. I'm going to change gears a little bit. So I personally gone on this little journey of just spending more time with male role models. And this isn't to indicate that my podcast is only going to have males. Getting the females onto the podcast has just been more of a timing thing. They are coming, don't worry. But I've been finding a lot of personal growth in sitting down with like dads, career-focused people that have a family. They really put their kids above almost everything. And I just really appreciate that. So one area that I've always idolized about yourself is your relationship with your kids. And it's been such an enjoyment for me to witness. I've never seen such a mini me like right before my eyes. It's incredible. So I guess my question is, how do you balance your roles as like a dedicated teacher, a father of two, a husband, and any tips to managing that for anybody else listening?
So yeah, the kids are the best thing that's ever happened to me, and Jess is the best thing that ever happened to me. And I think just staying present is, I think, one of my greatest skills, and staying appreciative of what's right in front of me. And when you live through that lens, I find, in your words, being a good dad or a good husband it becomes easier. It becomes second nature because you realize how lucky you are. And if I had to say anything, one thing is my superpower, it is that. It is recognizing how great life is in that exact moment. So example was, a couple months ago, we were just in the basement. The boys were up, Jesse was sleeping. We're all playing downstairs. I'm holding my 7-month-old, and my 3-year-old is playing with a golf stick or whatever it may be, a basketball or whatever it may be. And then Jesse comes down. The little one lights up and sees his mom and wants to go and spend time with her. So he goes there. Teddy and I keep playing. And then Teddy sees the little one, Teddy's my oldest, sees the little one enjoying his mom, so then he wants to go over to his mom and snuggle his mom. And all of it right in front of me. I'm sitting in a basement. Never thought I'd be a homeowner. I have a full-time job. I have a house. I have a fully finished basement. I was playing with my kids all morning. My beautiful wife walks down, is feeding my youngest one. My oldest is now snuggling, and right there in front of me, I see it, and I'm like, this is as good as it's ever gonna get. This is perfect. I've made it. And I'm very good at staying in that moment and recognizing that I don't have to look forward to anything right now because it's all right here. And so there's so many little of those moments. And when you have those moments, you're like, I want to replicate this as much as possible. But putting away the phone, putting away everything, don't need to take a picture of it, just be like, wow,
It's
perfect.
locked in there.
It's locked in there. So like that I think is like the easiest way to become there for your kids is just to appreciate the little things, the smallest things. And like I said, I think I'm pretty good at that. And I've said it to Jessie multiple times. I think she rolls her eyes at me now because I'm like, this is it. It's never gonna get any better than this, babe. And it very well may. But I'm okay with that too. Yeah, I'm just very lucky, and I know that.
Yeah. Who taught you the skill of presence?
My dad for sure. He passed away when I was 26, and his level of involvement, his level of seeing the beauty that the world has, whether it be, I know, a perfect moment in a song, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, or driving your kid to practice in the morning and just having that one time with one of his 3 kids. And understand that this ain't forever. This is gonna end soon. Like someday, I'm not gonna have this opportunity to do this with you all the time. And so his just always like being there in the moment and recognizing for what it is, I think is great. And then on a lighter note, it's very much reflected, I think, in my favorite TV character, Ted Lasso.
Heck yeah. I'm ready for people to start making comments in the podcast notes. Like the mustache, you're going hard on it.
It's been here for a while. I'm not going to take it off now, but yeah.
I remember sitting there watching the show for the first time with my partner at the time, and we just looked at each other because I think we just had breakfast with you guys. And we're like, Dave's Ted Lasso.
I've gotten that comment more often than not, and I'm like, I'm fine with it. It's fine. It's great. And I obviously love him, so it's,
So for those who haven't seen the show, you need to, but the reference, and I'm just speaking for myself of probably why there is a correlation. Ted Lasso as a character is super optimistic. His one-liners are
second to none.
Unlike anything you've ever seen online. But his enjoyment in the awkward moments is also really just a pleasure to watch too. I don't know. I can see it. That's awesome. Okay. So I had a question along the lines of, we've obviously talked about fatherhood with your kids. I'm curious, and maybe you can share about how being a father has also influenced your approach to teaching, or maybe even vice versa, because of teaching, your approach with your own kids.
Yeah. I think when it's like what the first one you said in terms of like how has being a father changed my role in teaching, it's just a little bit more patience because like you realize that, and as you older, this could be just a product of teaching for longer as well. When a kid is not right, when a student is lashing out or a student is not themselves, it's not that they chose to be rude that day or they chose to act this way. It's probably because they got something going on.
A response.
It's a response to something, and it goes to show like teachers are humans too, and we can be short with people as well. And you can. I always try to take it back to, okay, something's going on. That's not about me. That's not about the situation that you find yourself in. It's something else that has happened either at home or in their life, and something they're not willing to share with you yet. But just trying to be always understanding, because you just never know what somebody's going through. And so I think that has changed a little bit. And again, it could be parenthood, it could be over time. In terms of the reverse, I just see the kids, and I take a grade 8 class, for example, and I would look at all these grade 8 classes, and I would see like this group of 35 students. I'd be like, which one of these kids am I okay with my kid turning into? And then I go, 2? There's 2 of them that I'm okay with? And that's like my standard as like a dad. And I'm like, I'm worried about the other 34. And if they were my kid, and that's just so surface level. Again, I don't know them. I know them for 50 minutes at a time or 90 minutes at a time if you're in high school. That's just like on the surface, me worrying as a parent more than anything. But it hasn't really changed the way I teach or changed the way I parent all that much. But it gives me a little bit more cause for concern at times.
Then I'm sure that probably leads you to wanting to improve those kids so that maybe there's now 5, 6, 8.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just through time as well, just getting to know them, we change our views, but no, that's good. So obviously you spend a lot of time with students, and a big part of a child's day is in school. So as a teacher, what is something that you wish parents got to see more about their children that you get to experience? I could always reword that.
Yeah, no, it's I guess we want the parents to know that, like, we care.
Yeah.
We care a ton, and we know that, especially at the elementary level, when that teacher is with that student from the first bell to the last bell. In junior high and high school, it changes because they get multiple different teachers, and
Yeah.
they're not responsible for them for the whole day. As they get older, the leash gets longer and longer, and we let them fail to their own devices once they get older, especially in high school. But yeah, it's just that we care. And then if you, like, I've had great parents. I've had a very great parent community for the longest time. It's not equal. I know across all subjects and all demographics throughout the city, but I have been very lucky that I have had very little issues with parents. But what I will say for most teachers, especially teachers that are like coaching, so let's just take a coach for example, and they say that a parent has a problem with the way that you are dealing with their kid. Maybe they're not getting enough playing time or whatever it may be, or they're not drawing up a play for them, or they're not getting as much opportunity, whatever it may be. Especially for me as a parent now, I want them to know, listen, during the season, I'm spending more time with your kid than my own. And you have to realize that I'm not perfect. I'm gonna make mistakes, but I wanna do right by your child as much as possible, and my actions are in complete reflection of that. And I'm sorry if that falls short of your standard, but this is the way it is. So
And how do they receive that?
at that point, it's 50-50.
Okay.
Yeah, they're like, either I haven't been faced with that, but I've heard that from a lot of different teachers,
Yeah.
and that's my message to a lot of the parents is that the coaches are putting in huge amounts of work.
Yeah.
And they're just trying to do their best.
Yeah. Show a little compassion, empathy. Yeah, that's fair. So, over the years, I've witnessed you and your family overcome a lot of things together. We won't get into the topics, but I've noticed you and your partner, you and Jesse, and your community just really come together. What were some of the lessons that you've learned through kind of your hardships that really strengthened your relationship with your partner? And what gave you the strength to tackle these obstacles so well?
Yeah, like when Dad passed away, we were 25 and 26 and just freshly married, 3 months married, and halfway across the world when Dad did pass away. So it's just, you never can simulate those experiences, you just have to go through them. And the things that we're just stronger because of the tribulations that we've had. And we know, okay, if I'm not going to be able to show up 100% today, like, there's a reason, and the partner has to pick up way more. So my grandfather actually had this math, and I'll give him the credit for it because he used it at everybody's wedding. He said marriage math is not always 50-50. Like, you give your 50%, I'll give my 50%, and we got our marriage. It's perfectly whole. Some days I'm gonna give 10, and then you gotta get 90. Some days you're gonna give 2, and I'm gonna give 98. Marriage math has to work at the end of the day in order for you guys to be totally fine, but it's recognizing your role in certain situations. So obviously when my dad passed away, down and out for a number of months, and Jessie was the rock. She was amazing. She did everything that she had to do to get me where I needed to be, and I owe a lot of credit to that. And then seeing her become, it's one thing to have the love of your life, it's another one to see the love of your life become the mother of your children, and then what you're called to try to do as much as possible. And so yeah, through all the trials and tribulations, it's just being there. There's no word of advice I could give anybody, it's just other than being there. There's no playbook, I guess, for it. No secret sauce.
That's amazing, though. How do you stay motivated and resilient, especially with your line of work? Because you just mentioned you're going after your master's. So I would imagine that means that you are still passionate about teaching.
Yeah.
So how do you keep that motivation, that the excitement, the drive?
Yeah, I think it's something that we try to build into our students, but the idea of like always learning, like lifelong learning, is a phrase that every teacher will try to use at one point during another. And I think if you can emulate that, then you'll like doing what you're doing no matter what. And like, I think it can be a bit more like on your own terms, like being in charge of like your own professional development rather than going through a session that a school has set up for you. There's nothing wrong with those. But just not being satisfied with just knowing what you know right now, I think is like a hallmark of a lot of successful people. And again, in a line of work where I can work as hard as I want and I won't get paid any differently, the knowledge or the experience or the skills that you gain has to be the reward at that point. So just not being okay with knowing just what you know right now.
I see a little bit of you learning from your students, that whole comment at the very beginning about having the access to knowledge at the touch of their fingers. Yeah, we're gonna go with that. But yeah, basically you're going after it, you're seeking out the knowledge, you're doing the extra, and I think they're influencing you a little bit there, which is awesome. So another thing that I will acknowledge you for that you're really good at is meaningful connections. In the way that you just engage with people is exceptional. I'm obviously not one of your students, but I'm imagining it's the same way with students versus your community versus your family versus your friends. It's just, this is David. What are some of your tips and tricks to building meaningful connections?
I think asking good questions, being genuinely interested. Use a line from Fight Club that I always enjoyed when it was. If those of you have seen Fight Club, he's in like a terminal cancer group or whatever, and then when people think that you're dying, they really listen to you rather than just waiting for their turn to talk. So I always keep that in my back of my head. It was like, oh, you said something that's gonna make me want to say something later, and let's not forget about it because I'm gonna keep reminding myself. How about just not have a response and just keep asking like a question that's at the tip of your tongue at the end of their sentence? So I guess just wanting to know more without wanting to say anything.
Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest thing. And then keeping contact. Like I mentioned to you before, using my commute to check up on people that I haven't had a great dialogue with in a long time. That's part of the New Year's resolution, is just to try to stay in contact with people as much as possible. But yeah, asking questions and being engaged, I guess, is the, if there's a tip and trick attached to it, it's that.
That's powerful. Yeah. I commented on something similar on my year-end recap of like lessons learned. I've ran down the rabbit hole of one particular book several times now, You're Not Listening, and I'll have to reference that in the show notes, but she talks about very frequently the point where people don't feel heard is because most of the time we're listening, like you said, to respond. You're not hearing what they say, you're hearing something, then in your mind you're processing what your response is going to be. Therefore, you've eliminated everything else that they're talking about. So not only did you just cross that out, but then you just brought the conversation back to yourself afterwards.
Yes.
And I really like that message that you said there of just listening as if they're on their deathbed.
Yeah.
Sounds a little morbid, but I like the message. I really like the message. Okay, this one just for the up and coming people. What is advice that you'd give aspiring teachers who want to make a significant impact in the classroom or even get their start?
Goes back to what I said earlier in terms of the least that you can do is the least that you can do. Just give everything to your school community, because your life will always, for the most part, is always going to get more and more busy.
Yeah.
And as a parent, it is. It's just a fact. When you're new, you throw yourself into the work and throw yourself into the school community, and just know that it's not forever. Call it paying your dues if you want to. There's lots of different terms for it, but just understand that you'll never have the most amount of time that you have to give than right now, at the very beginning. You'll never have that time back. Yeah. And that forms such good habits too. And it gives every other teacher that's in, like a new teacher, them permission to do the same. Silent permission, right? If you are the example and then you are seen and you are heard the most in your school community, then they will be inspired probably as well. Like the leading by example thing is huge. And if I were to shout out a couple of new teachers that are doing this, Sid Padron in my department right now is doing a phenomenal job, first year teacher, and he's coaching wire to wire. He's coached football, he's coaching basketball right now, and he's doing track at the end of the year.
So we are getting close to the end here. We just have a couple questions, just wrapping it up. For you, what are your goals for the future, both as an educator and even in your personal life?
Yeah, goals. I'm taking my master's right now. I guess the immediate goal would be to finish that. I'm going to finish in just under a year. And to get that master,
teacher, coach, parents, and students yourself. That's amazing.
Yeah. Don't give me too much credit. I'm doing fine. I'm not knocking it out of the park or anything. But so yeah, I guess get the master's and 5 to 10 years, maybe become an administrator. That's something that I think is just like a new level of growth that I want to reach at some point. Personal life, I'd love to shoot under par.
Go.
No, that's never gonna happen. But no, as I see my boys grow up, I just want to give them every opportunity because I think I had every opportunity. And we talked about the previous generation, and we should always be like a step better than our parents. My parents are great. I want to be as good as my parents and give them every opportunity, and want to be as good as Jesse's parents and give them once a year vacations. And I think we had a phenomenal childhood, and if I could replicate that for my kids, then I'm doing a pretty rock solid job. Give them the best life, give Jess the best life possible, build the best life for our family, become an administrator one day, and if we can, win a couple championships along the way in coaching. So that'd be fantastic.
That'd be good. Is there a particular quote or philosophy that guides you in your daily life and your teaching career?
I don't know if it was a quote, but my brother talked about it a lot. He was one of my first coaches, as he's 5 years older than me, and he was one of my first coaches in high school. And his coaching philosophy, which I have taken with me for as long as I can remember, is never lose a loss. And so you're gonna lose in sport, in life, in business, in education. You're gonna lose all the time, probably more often than not. It's what you do with that information. Are you just gonna throw away that opportunity to learn? Are you just gonna throw away the lessons that are right in front of you? Or are you gonna learn from that loss and become back better than ever? So it's a choice. And it goes in line with, and it's so corny, but I've used it every year of my teaching and coaching career, is life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% how you react to it. So corny, my friends roll my eyes at me all the time, and my students are like, yeah, we know, Mr. Sai, we get it. And nope, I will die on that hill. I will die on that hill. Life is good. There's only one thing that we know certain about life. It ain't gonna go according to your number one plan. It's not. You're gonna have ups and downs, you're gonna have dips and dives and turns, and it's just how you respond to it. You can either go in a hole and forget everything that was right in front of you, a lesson, or you can use every opportunity to make yourself better the next day.
That's strong. That's amazing. I like that. All of that right there, it's especially resonating with me right now, and maybe I'm just attracted to that don't waste an opportunity view, and you spun it as don't lose a loss.
Yeah.
I love that. So final message, any final thoughts or message you'd like to share with listeners about embracing kind of your unique path to success?
Again, success has just been me about being happy, and it's saying yes more often. I like to do the podcast, right? Just saying yes to it. And I admire you for what you're trying to do, and like the message at the beginning of every episode is just to learn, to keep learning, and to highlight those that think that they're average, and to make people feel very worth, I think is a great initiative of what you're taking on here. And just say yes more often, never lose a loss, and just try to be happy. Just try to be happy. There's nothing, what else are we doing here? If we're not trying to be happy, what else are we doing here?
I love that. Thank you so much for joining the podcast. I was excited when I initially asked you. I don't know if you knew that I was serious. I think we were out at a friend's birthday party for their kid, and you're like, yeah, for sure, I love talking.
Yeah, I'm talking.
Like, hey. But no, there's a lot of good golden nuggets that you shared here, and I can't wait to actually get this out there. I think this one's going to be really popular, just because your warmth, your optimistic view towards everything is just contagious, and I can't wait to actually get this one out here. I'm really excited. So thank you, everybody who got all the way to the end here. I do recommend you subscribe, leave us a comment, just help us grow. I think this message is obviously, I'm biased to, but needs to get out there. People need to view themselves beyond their own parameters. We aren't all average. There's something about each and every one of us that's exceptional. So thank you so much. Let's get after it.